Hello, my name is Jill Robinson. I'm a social worker at St. Joseph's Healthcare London. I specifically work with individuals who have sustained a brain injury or concussion. Welcome to the session on navigating emotional changes in your recovery from a brain injury. The presentation today will focus on some of the emotional and psychosocial changes that you may have been experiencing after your injury. My hope is that coming together and discussing these changes will allow you to feel less isolated with these feelings, have a better understanding of why they are occurring, and how you can manage the emotional changes. The purpose of this session today is to normalize some of the emotional changes that you can experience after brain injury and learn strategies that will help you to better manage these emotions. The three most common emotional changes that occur after brain injury are anger, anxiety, and depression. We will also discuss the impact on role change and how this contributes to your emotional state post injury. I will review self management tools that can be used to help regulate your emotions. Specifically, we'll look at a type of mindfulness called grounding, and I will facilitate a grounding exercise with you. Finally, at the end of this session, I will provide some additional resources that can provide you with further education on these topics. What emotions have you experienced after your injury? Do any of the above emotions look familiar? Angry, sad, irritable, feeling down, anxious, flat, lack of motivation, crying when not sad, worried? While it is normal to experience changes in your emotions after a brain injury, you may have difficulty controlling your emotions and behaviors. You may find that the emotions you are experiencing, especially ones we label in society as negative, can feel larger or more intense than before your injury. The increased intensity of experiencing a roller coaster of emotions may also lead to feelings of anxiety or low mood as you struggle to understand your own response. Emotional lability is another type of emotional change that you may experience after your brain injury. This occurs when your emotional response does not match the situation or the environment that you are in. You may, for example, find yourself laughing at something you may have found sad in the past, or a situation may not warrant any response, and you find yourself laughing or crying. These emotions may also be brought on by situations or environments that would not have elicited responses like this before your injury, such as going to the mall or engaging in conversations with others. The good news is that emotional lability can become better over time.
For me, I know sometimes I will have times when it should be a really, really sad time, but I don't react kind of in that way either. I'll be flat, or I will I'll get nervous, I guess, about it, and I'll start to either cry or laugh, or like sometimes the emotion just doesn't match what I'm feeling.
Do you feel frustrated and irritable for no apparent reason? Do you snap at loved ones? Does your anger feel out of control? Let's take a closer look at the emotions of anger and frustration and how these emotions may look different than before your injury. Unresolved frustration may be expressed as anger before you even realize it is occurring. This may cause us to feel that our anger is out of control and we may be unaware of what is causing our response. Often, brain injury survivors will describe their anger level of reaching a 10 out of 10 instantly. The way you may express your anger may have also changed after your injury. You may swear, hit, yell, or feel so overwhelmed that you shut down emotionally. The important piece is to begin to understand what is triggering your emotional response. What are your physical symptoms of anger, so you can recognize them, and begin to implement a strategy to stop anger from getting out of control. One of the ways we can start to recognize our trigger for anger is to understand the primary emotion that is driving our anger. Both anger and anxiety are secondary emotions, and there is typically a primary emotion occurring in the background. I've used the above illustration of an iceberg in order to explain this. Our primary emotions are fear, sadness, joy, shame, frustration. However, using the iceberg as a guide, we can only see the part of the iceberg that is floating on the water, the physical representations of anger. You may recognize this emotion in a person that is yelling, stomping their feet, swearing, crying, etc. However, what we are unable to see is the part of the iceberg that is below the water or the primary emotion that an individual is experiencing. Primary emotions are quick to transition into secondary emotions. An example of this would be if I'm sitting quietly in my office working on my reports and my colleague flings open my door. Initially, I'm startled and begin to experience fear. But the primary emotion of fear shifts quickly to the secondary emotion of anger over being interrupted. Anger itself is a secondary emotion. It's a neutral emotion. It is neither inherently bad or inherently good, it's simply an emotion. It's our thoughts, values, and other primary emotions that cause our reaction, and thus anger to become a negative or positive emotion. Anger, also like anxiety, evokes flight, fight, or freeze response. So in flight, we want to leave the situation. In fight, we tend to argue, or in freeze, we're frozen and do not know how to respond. We need to understand the other primary emotions and thoughts that are causing our reaction, and we call these triggers. How do we start to manage our anger? We first need to understand the primary emotions and thoughts that we are experiencing that are being portrayed as anger. We also need to recognize our growing signs of anger. What does it look like physically? How does our anger look if we are annoyed versus when we are at our top level of anger? Understanding our growing signs of anger will allow us to put strategies in place before our emotions get the better of us. We can use the stoplight strategy as a framework to begin to look at how to manage anger. So, in the stoplight strategy, the red light indicates that we need to stop and recognize the emotion of anger that we are experiencing. What are our physical signs? What primary emotions are we feeling? The yellow light encourages us to evaluate the situation, and the green light reminds us to intervene with strategies to help regulate our emotions. Stop. Apply your mental break. Recognize you're angry and begin to look at which primary emotion are you feeling. It is important to recognize your physical and behavioral signs for anger. How do these change as the emotion of anger intensifies? Do you yell or begin to throw objects when your anger has peaked? Myself, I typically cry when I'm very angry. In the next slide, I'm going to show you a tool called the anger ruler. The anger ruler helps you to begin to recognize what your physical and behavioral signs are as your anger increases. This will also provide you with knowledge of when you should intervene with a strategy before your anger escalates and you feel out of control. Sometimes anxiety, anger, low mood, and poor self-esteem are the results of irrational negative self-talk or thought patterns. Some of these examples of negative thought patterns are personalization, when we assume everything is our fault, or when we label. We may say things like, I used to be able to read a book a week. After my injury, I can only read a page a week. I'm such a loser. Or we may discount any positives. So if we do something successfully, we say to ourselves, this doesn't count. These negative thought patterns can really lower our self-esteem and really increase our emotions of anger and anxiety. I'm going to give you, at the end of the presentation, a handout that's highlights the 10 unhealthy thinking patterns, and you'll recognize the three examples I gave within that handout. In the red light framework, this is the time that we can reflect on which primary emotion am I experiencing. As I talked about earlier, there's always a primary emotion driving our secondary emotion of anger. Am I feeling scared or am I experiencing sadness? What is the underlying trigger? Anger has many different faces and comes in different shapes, colors, and forms. There are at least 10 different anger styles. Sometimes we're at the annoyed stage, and sometimes we're at the Incredible Hulk stage of anger. Big, green, and scary. You're probably aware when you're at that Incredible Hulk stage, but what about when your anger is building? Can you recognize those stages? The anger ruler you see on the slide is a worksheet that helps you to describe what your anger looks like on a scale of 1 through 10. On the worksheet, it asks you at number 2, number 4, number 6, and number 8 to put a color or a descriptive word or physical attributes or maybe even a scenario to describe your anger at those levels. This may also help you to understand your trigger for the emotion. It may be really helpful to complete this worksheet with a social support or friend or family to help understand your intensity of anger, allowing you to manage it before it escalates. So I'll give you an example. I am a big eye roller. So at number 2, I'm probably rolling my eyes a little bit. I'm annoyed, I'm irritated. At number 4, I'm probably getting a little bit more red in the face. My tone may change. My shoulders may get up towards my ear. At number 6, I'm getting huffy in my body language. I'm definitely red. My eyes may well up. As I mentioned, I cry when I'm angry. And at number 8, I'm probably pretty close to tears and I might be yelling. So that would be how I would complete the anger worksheet. So you will get a copy of this at the end of the presentation. In the stoplight strategy, under the yellow light, we're cautious. We need to evaluate the situation for our anger. Is there a threat? Are we in any physical danger? If we are, obviously we need to seek safety, but usually the answer is no. So we need to really think about what primary emotions are at play, right? We are evaluating this in the yellow light. And maybe start to evaluate why we're experiencing the anger. Would this matter a year from now? 5 years from now? What would a friend think of this situation if they were in the same situation? So, really, we're evaluating what's going on and how we can manage differently. Under the stoplight strategy, the green light means go and intervene. Stop our anger from getting out of control. Some effective strategies for anger management include taking a time out, and if it's safe to do so, leave the situation. It would be important to tell family and friends that you're using this strategy to manage your anger so that they're aware and provide you with space. And I would recommend doing this ahead of time. Timeouts are not just for children, but are an effective way to regulate our emotions and provide us with time and space to reflect and evaluate the trigger to our anger, the primary emotion we're experiencing, and the overall situation. We can also do breathing exercises. There are many different types of breathing exercises to use. I like the big belly breath, which encourages us to breathe deeply through engaging the diaphragm. When we do it, we pull our belly button towards our spine on the inhale, and on the exhale, we allow our belly to expand. The other thing we can do is look at the situation from a different point of view. If we look at the situation positively, how is it different? The use of positive self-talk can help us to view the situation from a different perspective. So we may say to ourselves, I'm a good person having a difficult time at the moment. This self-talk is often helpful when we're embarrassed or upset with the intensity of the emotion we are feeling. Finally, when we're in that timeout, It can be helpful to envision a calm environment, such as a beach or water or your favorite place to be. This type of visualization can help us ground to the present moment and take control of our emotions. For many acquired brain injury survivors, brain injury brings on a period of intense and prolonged stress. The injury can result in dramatic life changes and worries about the future. Many survivors find themselves worrying that their life may never be quote unquote normal again. I personally do not believe in any normal. However, we need to be careful of getting caught in the trap of glorifying life pre injury and wanting to be our old self. Stress is defined as a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. Sometimes itself can motivate us to succeed, but too much stress can be harmful to our health and can make brain injury symptoms worse. It can cause sleep disturbances, low energy, decrease self esteem, and increase our anxiety. Understanding our triggers for stress and how we are dealing with it is the first step in trying to manage it. Anxiety is a secondary emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physiological changes. Anxiety can cause individuals to have doubt in what they are doing or what they can do. Typically, the emotion of anxiety arises with an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Along with depression, it is one of the most common emotional symptoms after brain injury. Anxiety may be experienced as a behavior response in which we fight, we flee or leave the situation, or freeze in a particular situation. Sometimes our feelings of anxiety are the result of irrational negative thought patterns. For example, we may consider everything bad that happens is our fault, or we may start to label ourselves. Another example is, I would say to myself, I'm such a failure as this task now takes me so long to do after my injury. And this would be a type of negative thought pattern. Recognizing that we are engaging in these thought patterns can help to challenge and stop them. I will provide a handout at the end of the presentation that discusses these 10 unhelpful thinking styles or negative thought patterns. Our challenge is to understand and start to recognize the triggers for symptoms of anxiety. As I mentioned earlier, anxiety is a secondary emotion. We need to think, what is the primary emotion or other emotions that I'm experiencing? In order to keep symptoms of anxiety and stress manageable, we can utilize several self-management strategies. We can practice grounding techniques or exercises. I'm going to talk a little bit more about mindfulness and grounding in future slides, but grounding is a type of mindfulness practice that allows us to manage negative emotions, such as fear, pain, anger. One grounding exercise that is helpful for anxiety is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. This exercise has you describe your environment in detail using all of your senses. So you name 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel on your person, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and you name 1 positive about yourself. In the next slide, you will see an example of this exercise. Another great strategy to deal with racing thoughts or constant worry is to create a worry time. For example, I would encourage you to write your worry down and then set a time where you're going to worry about this worry. So if we say Wednesday at 2 o'clock is my worry time and you write that worry down, typically when Wednesday at 2 p.m. happens, you're no longer ruminating about this fear. This is also helpful at night to get the racing thoughts out of your mind. Keep a pen and paper by the bed. Write the thought down and say to yourself, I'll worry about this in the morning. It's also important to use SMART goals, and this is really important for our recovery. So SMART goals, the acronym is goals that are specific, measurable, realistic, and timely. For example, if I wanted to return to long distance running and I have not run in a year, I would not start out running 10 kilometers, but instead, using SMART goals, set a smaller goal. I would start out running 2 kilometers and break it down into running, walking, as well as working on gradually increasing my distance. It's also important to adopt a self-care routine, which includes proper sleep, exercise, relaxation, and eating habits. Utilizing sleep hygiene and try to keep your bedtime and waking routine consistent. We want to keep our room for sleeping or intimacy only and avoid eating or working in your bed. We want to be mindful of naps, and if we do nap, try to avoid napping after 3 o'clock as this can reduce your nighttime sleep. Exercise is also important. It helps to release endorphins that allow us to feel positive. Try to establish a daily relaxation routine, which can include practicing mindfulness, maybe engaging with yoga, going for a walk, or listening to music if you're not noise sensitive. Any of these activities do not have to be for a long period of time. One of the most important things we can do is try to let go of past expectations of yourself. Honor where you're at and set realistic goals for your present in recovery. Taking on too much too soon may lead to frustration and failure. We can use positive affirmations as an encouragement. I once attended a conference and they provided us with this affirmation: I am enough, I have enough, and I do enough. I keep this on my fridge as a daily reminder. Asking for help is also really important. Seek support from trusted family and friends. This may include your family physician. And if symptoms of anxiety become unmanageable, you can look at alternatives in terms of medication and counseling.
Thanks for coming today. So what I thought we'd start off group this morning with is a type of mindfulness called grounding. And grounding is a really useful type of mindfulness as it helps us detach from negative emotions. So this exercise in particular is called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise. It's really useful when we're feeling like our emotions are overwhelming and we don't have control over them. It's also very useful for anxiety. So what we'll do, and I invite you to join along, is I'm going to review the exercise, and then we will close our eyes. We're going to take 3 breaths, and when you open your eyes on the last exhale, I'm going to have you do the exercise. So the way the exercise works is it's called 5-4-3-2-1. I have you scan your environment for 5 things that you can see. So for example, I can see the walls are green. I can see the blind is closed. I can see Mark, you're wearing a gray shirt. I can see Sherry, you have a purple shirt on and your necklace is a heart. Then what you do is scan for 4 things you can feel on yourself. So for me, I can feel the bracelet on my wrist. I can feel my jacket against my back. I can feel my shoe against my foot, and I can feel that I'm sitting on a chair. Then we scan the environment for 3 things that we can hear. I can hear the hum of the furnace. I can hear someone walking in the hallway, and I can hear the sound of someone typing in a nearby office. We then scan the environment for 2 things that we can smell. I can smell the soil in the plant behind me and the leaves of the plant. And then finally, one positive about myself. So I have a good smile that's contagious would be a good example of that. So when you're ready, I want you to sit comfortably in your chair with your back against the rest of the chair and close your eyes. And I want you to take an inhale and then slowly exhale. And then we'll do that 2 more times. Another inhale and slowly exhale. And 1 more inhale and slowly exhale. Now I'll get you to open your eyes. And I want you to scan your environment for 5 things that you can see. 4 things that you can feel. 3 things that you can hear. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 positive thing about yourself.
It's break time. Please take a 10-minute break from the screen. As a result of brain injury and subsequent life changes, you may feel you're struggling with your sense of identity, and this can lead to experiencing symptoms of low mood and/or anxiety. Feeling sad after an injury is expected. However, if these symptoms become persistent and begin to interfere with daily life, it may be more of a concern. Depression, which is diagnosed, unlike low mood, typically lasts much longer. Approximately 18 to 37% of people with a concussion develop symptoms of depression in their first year of their injury. 1 to 2 years after the injury, this can double, with up to 61 of survivors reporting feelings of low mood. Low mood can be diagnosed as depression and the DSM-5 when 5 or more of the above symptoms have been present during the same 2-week period and represent a change from previous functioning. So some of these categories would be depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, diminished interest or pleasure in activities that used to be enjoyed, significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain, insomnia, feelings of agitation, fatigue, or loss of energy nearly every day, feelings of worthlessness, diminished ability to concentrate, recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal ideation without or with a specific plan, or suicide attempts. It's interesting when we look at the symptoms, as these are also post-concussion symptoms. This can become a challenge when treating brain injury, as some physicians/clinicians may favor one ailment over another, when in reality, the ABI and low mood/depression need to be treated concurrently. Depression is a mental health illness and needs to be treated. It is not anyone's fault, and you did not bring it on. It is important to recognize this and believe that low mood/depression can improve with proper support. Not believing this can make for more of a struggle, increase isolation, and lead to worsening of low mood or depression symptoms. The emotional difficulties that were experienced prior to the injury can intensify and need to be discussed with your care team. Sometimes, if these emotions are not supported and recognized, this can lead to the use of alcohol or other substances, as well as we can engage in other harmful behaviors. Substance use after brain injury can worsen post-concussion symptoms, increase the risk of having another injury, and prolong recovery, as our brain is still healing. It is recommended that individuals remain abstinent for at least 1 year or longer. When individuals experience low mood that lasts longer than 2 weeks, the first step is to acknowledge the problem and take steps to cope actively with the depression. We need to try to avoid relying on negative coping behaviors such as substance use or negative self-talk like "this is what I deserve." There are many organizations and professionals that can help. The earlier that you ask for this support, the better, as waiting can worsen symptoms. The 2 most common treatment approaches for depression are medication and psychotherapy. Either or both may be appropriate. It's important to consult with your care team and/or your family physician, as they can assist with referrals or prescriptions. It's also important to speak with professionals that understand brain injury. What else can we do to help battle depression? Being active with our bodies and minds is also important. We know that aerobic activity has been found to reduce depressive symptoms, increase energy, and our overall sense of self-worth. Of course, with exercise, we need to be mindful of the pace and plan, recognizing any cognitive or physical limitations. Some individuals find having a routine and structure helpful. If possible, return to work, school, or a specific activity for a few hours. The routine can help to increase your sense of purpose. It's really important to stay actively engaged in seeking means to improve your mood. We also need to be our own advocate. If you're finding an aspect of your treatment plan not helpful, advocate to do something different. If we find our emotions and thoughts becoming overwhelming or revolve around thoughts of suicide, there are many crisis supports available to help. In London, CMHA, Thames Valley Addiction and Mental Health, have a 24/7 crisis information and support line. Trained mental health counselors answer this line and will support you with next steps, which may include creating a safety plan or having their mobile team come to you to ensure you remain safe. This crisis line is housed in the Mental Health and Addiction Crisis Center at 648 Huron Street. You can also go to the Crisis Center in person and speak with a counselor. They operate 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. Another good resource is Connects Ontario. Connects Ontario operates like a call center and has information on all mental health and addiction services across Ontario. There's also a great app that is available for both Apple and Android phones called Be Safe. If your phone is password protected, it allows you to create your own safety plan, including contacts and activities that have kept you safe in the past. I recommend that you create a safety plan when you're not in crisis or experiencing suicidal ideation and share it with a trusted support person. One of the most important things you can do is to celebrate your improvements and try to avoid comparing yourself to your pre-injury self. And remember that not everything that may be contributing to low mood is directly related to the brain injury. Difficult situations occurred before the injury, too. After experiencing an acquired brain injury, you may struggle to make sense of your identity and are in the process of sorting out your role with your family, friends, and within the community. Roles can be defined as the role or responsibility that we undertake within our family, our social network, and community. These roles may be appointed to you or roles that you have taken on. We all have many roles, from specific roles, like mine as a social worker, to general roles like being a parent or a friend. We can use our roles to often shape our identity. How many people identified themselves by their career or the role that they occupied pre injury? Roles can be perceived as meaningful or perceived as lacking purpose. We need to examine the negative thought patterns we apply to the role we think we hold. Are we considering the meaningful roles we continue to hold after injury, like being a parent, spouse, friend, survivor, or are we focused on negative roles we envision ourselves in post injury, like being a care receiver, a patient, unemployed? Would our friends and family apply the same role to us or perception of that role? We need to think about the process of grief and loss in order to better understand how experiencing a role change may be a difficult adjustment. Although our roles within our family, community, and social network may have changed post injury, the values we hold dear always remain with us. Values are traits or qualities that are considered worthwhile, and they often represent our highest priority and deeply held driving forces. They also help us define roles. Understanding what our core values are and how they shape our worldview may provide us insight in how we shape our identity. One step to reclaim your identity or sense of self is to honor these values and your present attributes. I have heard from several patients that post-injury that they were forced with a role change, and often this role change is more in line with their core values. An example of this is patients saying to me prior to their injury, they worked 70 hours per week and never saw their family. They prioritized their family as the most important, however, weren't ever spending time with them. What they share now is now that they weren't working, they're able to dedicate more time to be with their family. And this is in line with their core value being family. Patients often see this as the gift of the injury. We never want the injury to happen, but if we can find that gift or that silver lining, we are of being forced to stop and examine what is really important and how we can align our core values with our identity and what we do. Many brain injury survivors report experiencing changes in relationships with both family and friends post-injury. If we look at brain injury from a family systems approach, it can impact the whole family or our entire support system. Within the family system, we all hold specific parts that allow the family unit to evolve. But when one part shifts or changes, like experiencing a brain injury, all other parts must switch and change in order to keep the unit going. If this does not occur, the unit can break down. So after brain injury, family members try to keep the family evolving by taking over the roles of the person who was injured. After time, however, family members may expect the survivor to return to normal. The survivor may feel out of control of their lives and resent the fact that a family member is making decisions that they once made for themselves. This can lead to feelings of dependency and negative thoughts regarding sense of self-worth. A survivor may also experience changes in sexuality post-injury. This can occur for a number of reasons, including changes to physical health, including associated injuries, hormonal changes, medication side effects, even damage to the frontal lobe, which controls social and sexual behavior, can lead to these changes. A survivor may also struggle with their role change within their intimate relationship. If their partner is now their primary caregiver, this becomes difficult sometimes to navigate. The survivor may experience low self-esteem, and this may lead individuals to isolate socially and withdraw from relationships. Whether we're experiencing role change within our family, within the community, or even our own sense of identity, it's really important to discuss how we're feeling. We need to be brave and be vulnerable. Echoing the words of Brene Brown, at the roots of vulnerability is courage. We need to have the courage to work on communication and talk about our expectations, our fears, and our emotions. I'm going to go through an assertive communication strategy on the next slide that can be helpful to navigate difficult conversations and help you identify the meaning of what you want to convey. In your recovery, I encourage you to set healthy personal boundaries. Boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits we establish to protect ourselves. They allow us to separate who we are and what we think and feel from the thoughts and feelings of others. This allows us to recognize that we are individuals with our own emotions, needs, and values. And this is really key in our recovery. A lot of times brain injury appears as an invisible injury, and people aren't cluing into what we need because they don't see the physical signs necessarily. And I think sometimes we lose the feelings of having boundaries or feeling like we need boundaries because we are feeling so dependent. But we need to know we have the right to have these boundaries, and we need to recognize that other people's needs and feelings are not more important than our own. We also need to learn how to say no and identify actions or behaviors that we may not find acceptable. The other thing that can be really important as we navigate role change is to boost the romance in our intimate relationships, right? This is hard because sometimes we transition into a more dependent relationship where our spouse or our partner becomes our caregiver. And how do we go back to being in that intimate relationship equally? We can start dating again and boost the romance within your intimate relationships. It's important that when we're dating or if we're planning date days, we get rest before going out. We use pacing and planning, and we try to, find environments that are non-distracting that we will do well in. There is a fantastic book by Gary Chapman entitled The Five Love Languages, and he looks at, we each have our own love language, and it really discusses these love languages, how we give and receive love. And this can be a useful tool when we're trying to boost romance in a relationship and encourages us to learn our partner's love language, right? Whether it's words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, physical touch, and receiving gifts. It's also important to understand how we give and receive love. This can be useful for, as I said, boosting the romance in the relationship post injury. I'm going to introduce to you the DISC model of assertive communication. And this is a really helpful tool that can help you navigate your recovery and what you need in your recovery when you're discussing these needs with friends and family. And as we talked about, establishing really healthy personal boundaries. The DISC model is a form of assertive communication that can be used when dealing with conflict, and as I mentioned, to help you maintain healthy personal boundaries. It's really important when we start off a conversation with someone and we're using this model, is ask permission to have this conversation. Say, Paul, I need to talk to you about something. Is this an okay time to speak? I think this is important because we may not have knowledge or recognize everything that has occurred in that other person's day, and we want them to be open and receptive to this conversation. The other thing that's really important and key when we're using this model is to use eye language, make eye contact, and stand tall. This conveys the message that what you have to say is important to you, and it minimizes the other individual from becoming defensive as you are not stating what they are doing, right? You're using I, you're stating what you need, you're making eye contact, stating what's important, and standing tall conveys confidence. This type of communication takes some practice to get used to, as we typically do not speak in this way. So I also encourage you is to use the model and write down what you like to say before proceeding. So I'll go through each step in the model. So it's DISC. Again, step 1 is describe. The E in the DISC is express emotions. The S is specify, and the C is consequences. So describe, we're going to say what is happening that you want to deal with. We're going to focus on the present and the immediate situation. With E, we're going to express how you feel. With S, you're going to say what you'd prefer like to see happen or what is important to you. And C indicates the consequence or the positive payoff for both of you. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I was living with my roommate and I'm the one always taking out the garbage and I'm getting really upset about this. So I might start off and say, hey, Paul, I'm wondering if we can have a conversation. I have something that is on my mind that I'd like to discuss with you. So I've used permission. Paul, lately I've noticed I've been the one taking out the garbage for the past 6 garbage nights. I'm feeling rather frustrated and feeling like I'm being taken advantage of, and I'm feeling resentful towards you. What I'd like to see happen is I'd like us to set up a schedule on the calendar where we alternate garbage nights. And one night you do it, the next night I do it. This way, I won't feel like I'm being taken advantage of and I won't feel resentful in our relationship. What do you think about this situation and compromise? So I've described to Paul what's been going on. I've used I specifying what I feel. At the S, I've kind of come up with a plan of how we can better, work the rotation of chores. And I've talked in the positive payoff for the consequence, right? Saying I will no longer feel resentful. So this is, as I mentioned, a really great tool. It does take time and practice, so it's important that we practice by writing it down and getting used to how we describe, how we use I language, how we specify. And that's a really key too, is being really specific about what you need and then discuss the consequence or positive payoff. All right. Now that we have covered the 4 most significant emotional changes that can occur after brain injury, anxiety, low mood and depression, anger, and role change, and some strategies to assist to regulate these emotions, I want to discuss in more detail the importance of utilizing mindfulness throughout your recovery. Being mindful and the use of mindfulness exercises has proven to be an important part of recovery from brain injury. Consistent practice of mindfulness can assist individuals with stress management, reduction of anxiety symptoms, pain, and is a restorative activity. Mindfulness is essentially taking care of what is right in front of us, allowing us to notice how we're responding to both internal and external stimuli. Mindfulness can help us detach from negative emotions such as anger, sadness, feeling overwhelmed, and physical pain. These types of mindfulness exercises are called grounding exercises. Grounding exercises often work by having you focus outward on the external world rather than inward towards the self. You can think of it as a distraction or a form of centering. We can use grounding when we're feeling overwhelmed with emotional pain so we can briefly detach and gain control over our emotions. Grounding anchors you to the present and to reality. Grounding can be done any place, anytime, and anywhere, and no one needs to know you're doing it. It does, however, take time and practice. Grounding is much more active than relaxation exercises and is tended to help with negative feelings. There are several types of different grounding exercises, but the three main forms are really mental, where we're focusing our mind, soothing, where we're talking to ourselves in a kind way, and physical, where we're focusing on our senses and what we're experiencing from a physical standpoint. In a minute, we're going to practice a mindfulness exercise together. Today, I'm going to lead you through a mindfulness exercise that is a body scan. Start by getting comfortable in your chair. If you're sitting with your legs crossed, I invite you to uncross your legs and place both feet on the ground. I also encourage you, if you feel safe to do so, to close your eyes. You'll be engaging in a body scan, so what I want you to imagine is you have a laser beam scanning your body from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Let's start to notice our breath. Do not try to adjust it, just become aware of it. As you're breathing, notice any tension, pain, and discomfort. Also notice where you're feeling relaxed, tension-free, and comfortable. Notice the difference. What do you notice about the room you're in? What is the quality of the air? Is it cool, warm, fresh? Do you feel the air on your skin? Where do you feel that? Are you sitting comfortably in your chair? How is the lighting in this room? Is there some natural light coming in? What are your feelings attending group today? Are you annoyed, anxious, uncertain? Or are you feeling a sense of ease and positive anticipation? Or maybe both? Notice how these two feelings coexist in your body. Where are you feeling this? And when have you felt this before? How does being in this group feel? Does it remind you of an earlier time in another group? How do you feel about those memories? Are they positive ones or maybe ones of some challenge? Where do you feel that in your body? When you looked around the room, did you notice anyone or anything in particular, and why? What is it about that person or object that drew your attention? Is it an immediate positive feeling or maybe a feeling of some struggle? When you think about the discussion in group today, or that you may have after this presentation, do you have an idea in your mind of how that will go? Do you look forward to it? Are you here with your full attention, or is your attention elsewhere? How can you bring your mind to focus on the people around you and the presentation today? How can you sit with an open mind and consciousness? How can you be open to the process and interchange in the room today? Notice today how your coming to group impacts how you relate to others. Avoid judging yourself Accept where you are and notice how it is different from other days. I'll get you to do one more inhale and exhale, and then when you're ready, we'll get you to slowly open your eyes. So that was one type of mindfulness exercise. I invite you to try others and practice mindfulness on a regular basis, as it can be a really helpful strategy for navigating emotional changes after your injury. What other steps can we take to understand and regulate our emotions? We've discussed, an anger ruler. We've discussed mindfulness strategies. So what else can we do? Another key tool to helping to navigate these emotional changes is to get better informed. It's important to seek knowledge and support as you and your loved ones navigate your recovery. St. Joe's Healthcare London has some excellent resources for caregivers and families on the website about brain injury and post-concussion symptoms, including a video series entitled their Survivor and Family Education Series. This is a 7-week video series that is presented by brain injury professionals at Parkwood Institute and highlights important topics pertaining to recovery. The series historically ran annually in the spring. I've included the link to access these series. Another amazing resource is Ontario Brain Injury Association. It's an excellent organization that offers information and support for survivors and their family. ABI, or Ontario Brain Injury Association, also offers a peer support program in which survivors are matched with a mentor that have lived experience. As a participant in the program, you have the opportunity to learn from someone who can offer guidance based on their experience living with an acquired brain injury. The support is provided either by telephone or virtually, and you determine together the frequency of the meetings. Typically, individuals are in the program for approximately a year. Ontario Brain Injury Association also runs support and social leisure groups all across the province. These groups meet on a monthly or weekly basis and allow participants the opportunity to discuss common concerns as well as living with a brain injury. It can be very powerful when you realize that you are not alone, as brain injury can feel very isolating. Our overall challenge. It's important to reflect on the progress you have made since your injury. There has probably been a great deal of improvements, but often it can be difficult to recognize these areas of success. We need to find ways to reflect on, evaluate, and celebrate our progress. I encourage the patients that I work with to list on a daily or weekly basis one challenge that they have overcome and one success that they have experienced. It's also important to not wear rose-colored glasses when reflecting on our life prior to injury. We most likely experienced challenges then, and not all of our problems faced are related to injury. Finally, we need to recognize that emotional and physical recovery are two different things. We need to be kind to ourselves and accept where we are. Just want to thank you for your attention during the presentation on navigating emotional changes after brain injury. I hope that some of these strategies will help with your success in recovery. Thank you.